Eyes are often the coolest, cutest, or weirdest part of a character's design. The vibe of anime characters can completely alter when given different eyes, and the symbolism in eyes goes far deeper than you would think. First and most obvious, everyone knows the sharp anime eyes, mostly found in males, but female characters have them too. When you look at a character with sharp eyes like this, you instantly get a grasp on the character's personality. If I were to show you a group of characters with blank faces and told you to guess what their personalities were based solely on their clothing, face shape, hairstyle, and stance, you might be able to guess from certain characters, but the second I throw in the eyes, suddenly things are a lot more clear. Let's take a look at a character that I find fascinating, not just because of his personality and role, but because of the design of his eyes. L from Death Note. This is a character where his eyes make the character look borderline weird. Although his eyes are weird, people still think he's hot for some reason. The eyes all by themselves tell you a lot about L. And L is by far one of the most complex characters in all of anime, in my opinion. To this day, not everyone can come to a clear consensus on his character. Despite being a smarter character, his eyes are wide, almost a complete circle, which makes it hard to read him, like he shows no emotion. And if you listen to his most famous quote,
"Lying monsters are a real nuisance. They are much more cunning than other monsters. They pose as humans, even though they have no understanding of the human heart. They eat, even though they've never experienced hunger. They study, even though they have no interest in academics. They seek friendship, even though they do not know how to love. If I were to encounter such a monster, I would likely be eaten by it. Because in truth, I am that monster."
he just confirms that he doesn't understand the human heart, and if you look at his eyes, they have no gleam. Almost every anime character in existence has a gleam in their eye. When they don't, that usually means they're dead, and you can see some examples of them going out as people die. They lose their gleam. Everyone else in Death Note has a gleam in their eye. Not only his skin being pale, his eyes having no gleam and the shadows underneath almost make him look dead. Or like the monster he says he is. Looking at Naruto's eyes, you could probably guess he's hyper and high-tempered. Although everything about Naruto screams that. His hair color, his clothing color, his whiskers. Looking at Sasuke's eyes, you could probably assume the kind of character he is. He has very sharp eyes, not to mention black eyes. Or red, depending on his mood, I guess. Even with his black eyes, you can assume what his voice sounds like. You can assume what his personality is, and you can assume he's probably decently powerful. Sharp eyes are very easy to read, but those characters never start out with those eyes. On the complete opposite side of the spectrum, there's the innocent eyes. These eyes that are mostly found on cute anime girls and have a lot of romance animes and stuff. Either way, these eyes will be present in any anime, mostly children. Take Attack on Titan, for example. Eren, Armin, and Mikasa all had these eyes, the eyes of innocence, the eyes that clearly wouldn't be on any anime character that had killed anyone. When the three of them were kids, Mikasa was the one who had lost the most. She lost her whole family, and comparing the three of their eyes, you can guess that she had lost the most.
I noticed this a lot in anime. The eyes of a killer.
The perfect example of this is Vinland Saga.
In Vinland Saga, the main character and side characters in this village are happy and excited to go to war, talking about their weapons and how many people they think they could take out. And every single one of them has the eyes of innocence. Comparing their eyes to the eyes of the Vikings they go up against not long later, you could tell they haven't killed anyone.
Now we've seen the eyes of killers and the eyes of innocence, but what about eyes of a killer that doesn't kill anymore? This is pretty specific, right? The eyes of an innocent person that used to kill. Looking back at Vinland Saga once again, when you look at the eyes between the villagers that are excited to finally go to war and murder people, then you look at Thor's. There's a big difference. Thor's eyes look like a mix between sharp and wide.
You could tell those eyes have seen things. If you were to widen his eyes, it wouldn't fit his character at all. Another character similar to Thor's in this regard is Erwin Smith. Erwin Smith's eyes are narrow, yes, but there's something different. Comparing him to someone like Levi, Erwin Smith hasn't lost it all. He still has something that can make him happy, and you can see it in his eyes. He's determined for something. He was sure that as long as he got to achieve his dreams, his comrades' deaths were not in vain. He believed that everything he lost could be worth it in the end if he could just figure out the truth of the world. And that's why Erwin Smith's eyes are different. He isn't fueled by hatred of the world. He isn't fueled by rage or revenge or killing people. He's fueled by something far more human and, well, moral. In his youth, his eyes were wide and innocent. You'd think that his eyes are only wide here because he's a kid, right? No. His eyes are wide here not because he's a kid, but because he hasn't lost anything yet. At this time, Erwin still had a normal child life. And here's a kid that lost pretty much everything around the same age as well. This child is the same age, and not too much prior he looked like this. It's a pretty big difference. This change was not due to age, it was due to experience.
That's why all of those romance animes, the eyes always look like this. Because they don't experience anything. Just kidding. Sometimes characters' eyes don't seem to change much throughout the whole show. Like Naruto, Luffy, Goku, and Edward Elric.
Their eyes stay the same throughout their whole lives, and those are all main characters who have been through a lot. But there is a reason their eyes never change. What do they all have in common? They all remain high-spirited and good-natured people throughout the whole show. Goku never stops wanting to be the strongest, Luffy never lets anything bring him down, the Elric brothers keep their childlike innocence, not going as far as to kill a single person, and Naruto's determination led to a lot of pain, but in the end he still had that same energy he kept as a child.
Now here's one of the best, if not the best characters in all of anime. Simone the Digger. At one glance, you probably couldn't tell this man is the most powerful character in all of fiction. Throughout the story as a kid, Simone had wide, childlike eyes. Every time you look into those eyes, it didn't really seem strong.
He was always scared and dug his head in the ground when things got tough. The person you found strong and reliable was Kamina.
Kamina was always pushing Simone to be his best self and to believe in himself. And throughout the whole story, Kamina was the beacon of safety and strength that everyone had. It took some time, but Simone went from this to this. Oh yeah. And suddenly you can believe he's the strongest character in all of fiction. Now let's talk about something I'm sure all of you guys were hoping I'd get to eventually. One, the artist behind Mob Psycho and One Punch Man. Everyone who's introduced to his character design probably found it weird at first. In Mob Psycho, most everyone had these eyes, whereas in One Punch Man only Saitama does. In Mob Psycho, the main character Kageyama's eyes are straight lines at the top and droopy at the bottom. It makes him almost look bored, empty, or tired. But he doesn't exactly look angry, and he isn't. A similar thing is with Saitama. Saitama's eyes are pretty much just circles with a dot in the middle. He's the definition of bored. Looking at him, he kind of just looks like a silly, pathetic little side character, which is the aim, but when he gets serious, his eyes become defined and sharp, as if he's a completely different person. This is something I've always loved in One Punch Man because his eyes change so drastically, and just like how the eyes reflect the character's personality, it's not only his eyes that change. Aside from his body also becoming more defined and ripped like a strong hero, his voice and mannerisms also change. When Saitama's pushed, he shows the hero side of himself that everyone who sees grows to respect him for. Like, seriously, he gets serious with Genos and suddenly he's a disciple. He fights Fubuki and now she's lusting for him. Bang, Moomin Rider, King, all these random people that he saved. When Saitama's serious, everyone else can't help but admire him. He's the embodiment of a hero. Kageyama is similar. When he gets serious, his eyes become defined and sharp like this. And also, whenever he defeats a villain, they, become his friend. This is Kageyama's proof that he is still under some semblance of control when he's using his power. But when Kageyama gets angry, we see this. Pure white circular eyes with cracks of what looks like lightning coming out. The circular eyes symbolize that there is no human emotion to read. He's a blank slate, like a monster. There's no pupils, which we often see in anime. When you get rid of the pupils and it's just white, it's almost as if there's a rage so high that they lose control of their humanity. It's a huge reason the Avatar state is so freaking cool. In Airbender, you fear those eyes. You can't read them, and that's what makes them work so well. This is Kageyama's question mark mo. This is Kageyama's question mark mo. I can't say that, meaning there isn't even a percentage to grasp how powerful he is at this moment, which is perfectly represented by his eyes that also seem to show nothing. Saitama has only ever done this once, and it's in the manga. I could talk about the shading, but I'll save that for another video because there's a lot I want to talk about there. Speaking of glowing eyes, I'm sure you guys have all noticed light changing within a character's eyes. I talked about this a bit with Death Note, but I'm going to talk about it again. When a character dies, they always lose that gleam in their eye. But it's not just when characters die. Let's take Attack on Titan for example. In this scene in the Battle of Trust, Armin tells Mikasa and the rest of his comrades that Eren had died on the battlefield. As Armin says this, we see that he's got that gleam in his eye. Because even though his best friend was killed on the line of battle, he still has means to survive. He still has a will to live. But when Mikasa tries to comfort him, we see this. Mikasa has no gleam in her eye. Her eyes are the same as, the eyes of any dead character. Curved downwards on the outside showing sadness. It's just depression. It's just straight depression. Armin didn't lose his gleam because he has a reason to live beyond Eren. He's willing to continue living. However, Eren was Mikasa's only reason to live. Eren was everything she had, and without him, she had no will to live. She speaks otherwise to Armin and her comrades, but when alone, Mikasa said it herself. They took everything from her, and she was ready to let the Titan eat her. And then look at this. As Mikasa wonders why she wasn't letting the Titan kill her, she gets a flashback of the day she met Eren. When he told her to fight. The only way to live is to fight. And suddenly, it's back. The gleam in her eye that represents her will to live. This is symbolism genius. This is not only something done in Attack on Titan. Once again, looking at Death Note, when Light wrote Naomi's name in the Death Note, essentially ordering her to off herself, the moment it took effect, her eyes lost that gleam, symbolizing that her life was over right then. Her will was gone. The shading plays a lot into this as well. The shading proves that even though the Death Note had taken effect, she knows what is happening even if she can't fight it. All she can do is blankly stare in defeat. Without the shading, the blank stare wouldn't have been nearly as effective. Honestly, this scene was the defining moment I stopped enjoying the show and started hoping Light would be killed. It's shows like this that I just can't handle, dude. They're just too freaking sad. Anyway, back to Attack on Titan, arguably a more depressing show. When Eren saw his dead comrades, for a moment he was filled with sadness and shock. But watch the gleam in his eyes as that shock turned to anger. The gleam in his eye gets larger and brighter. Levi sees his entire team killed. In that moment, he has no gleam. He was dead inside. And when he found the female Titan, the gleam in his eye was red. In this moment, the female Titan should have just, given up. Because if Levi has a red gleam, you're just gonna die. That's it. That's just it. You're gonna die. Although she didn't. But whatever. It's Mikasa's fault. We often see more than just the gleam in their eye. Take this for example. Right after Mikasa regains her will to keep fighting, Eren stomps behind her and then punches the Titan approaching Mikasa. Watch the gleam in his eyes. It literally forms a trail. And we see this a lot in anime. It's a perfect representation of how, in that moment, Eren's will to live and his will to keep fighting can't be bound. When this happens in anime, it's always happening when a character is at their peak. We see this happen to Erwin Smith as well. This exact same feeling of resilience and determination can also be represented through that eye twinkle that we all know and love from old anime shows. One common thing that I can't overlook is when a character is in shock. Their eyes often shake like this. This happens very often and it's pretty basic. However, without that little effect, it wouldn't show the emotion of the character nearly as much. It's simple yet extremely effective, which is why you probably couldn't name a single anime that doesn't utilize that trick. The eyes always represent the characters perfectly. It's obvious, it seems like it should be that way. However, it is important to understand why the eyes are drawn the way they are, and more than anything, it's just interesting to know how deep you can go with something as simple as eyes. When it comes to close shots, utilizing shading makes the eyes brighter. You can always tell what's going on with the character based on their eyes. Unless their eyes are completely shadowed out, which usually represents unpredictability, like a rise of emotions that's about to burst out one way or another. There's far more symbolism than I even thought going into this video, and there's probably a lot more I didn't talk about, but hopefully, now y'all will focus and notice the eyes more in the next anime you watch. It's one of the many reasons why I believe anime is the greatest when it comes to symbolism and visual storytelling, and in a way, it makes characters seem even more real than live-action characters. In anime, you can push the limits of literally everything, and it's great. Become a Patreon member. If you need motivation and inspiration, I've also got a Discord server in the description. If you want to chat about animation and art, motivation, or whatever, I'll be there to give you some words of encouragement. Let's keep moving forward.